Hello all, welcome back to Cloudy ML. So today we are going to be talking about hierarchical clustering. So hierarchical clustering is often associated with heat maps. So if you are not already familiar with what heat maps are, just know that the columns typically represent different samples and the rows typically represent measurements from different genes. Red typically signifies red. Well, red typically signifies high expression of a gene, and blue or purple means lower expression for a gene. Hierarchical clustering orders the row and or the columns based on similarity. This makes it easy to see correlation in the data. For example, these samples express the same gene while these behave the same. Okay, so on the left hand side we have a heat map without hierarchical clustering, and on the right side we have a heat map hierarchical clustering. So you can see that the clustering makes a big difference on how the data is presented. Heat maps often come with dendrograms. We'll talk about those too. Okay, so let's get started. So we'll see with a small example. So here we have got a simple heat map that has 3 samples and 4 genes. For this example, we are just going to cluster or reorder the rows or the genes. Conceptually, the first step is to figure out which is the most similar to gene number 1. Two are different, we can tell because the colors are very different, right? Gene 1 is highly expressed on sample number 1, so it is a red color gene. 2, however, is too highly expressed on sample number 1, it has a blue color. In sample number 3, 1 is lowly expressed, so it's blue, and gene 2 is highly expressed, and it is red. Okay, 1 and 3 are similar, so that means in sample 1 both gene 1 and 3 red. Okay, like 1 and 3 are red, they are highly expressed in sample 3. They are both blue, meaning they are lowly expressed, right? Gene 1 and 4 are also similar. Okay, however, gene number 1 is more similar to gene number 3. Now, second step is to figure out what gene is most similar to gene number 2. Gene number 2 is most similar to gene number 4. Okay, and then we do the same thing for gene number 3 and then gene number 4 as well. Okay, and step number 3, we look at the different combinations and figure out which 2 genes are the most similar ones. We have then that we merge them into a cluster. Okay, and this case genes number 1 and 3 are more similar than any other combination of genes. So genes 1 and 3 are now cluster number 1. Okay, next the step 4 is to go back to step 1, but now treat the next cluster like it's a single gene. So in step 1 we figure out which gene is most similar to cluster number 1. Okay, and cluster number 1 is most similar to gene cluster number 4. Okay, and we figure out which gene is most similar to gene number 2. Okay, so in this case number 2 is most similar to gene number 4, but notice that we have compared gene number 2 to cluster number 1. Okay, so and then we do the same thing for gene number 4 as well. So now out of the different combinations, figure out which 2 genes are the most similar. Okay, and merge them into a cluster. So 2 and 4 are the most similar combination here. So we merge them into the cluster and go back to step 1. However, since all we left are 2 clusters, we merge them and bam, we are all done. Okay, hierarchical clustering is usually accompanied by a dendrogram. So basically it indicates both the similarity and the order that the clusters were formed. Cluster number 1 was formed first and is the most similar, it has the shortest branch. Then cluster number 2 has second and is the second most similar, it has a second shortest branch. And then cluster number 3, which contains all the genes, was formed last and it has the longest branch. Now let's go over a few nitpicky details. So remember, the first step, figure out which gene is most similar to gene number 1. Okay, then next we have to define most similar genes. Okay, now the means of method for determining similarity is arbitrarily chosen. However, the Euclidean distance between genes is used a lot. So let's look at the example. We'll use a very simple heat map that just has two samples and two genes. Now we are displaying the values that underlie the color that we have in the heat map. Okay. The Euclidean distance between gene 1 and 2 is the square root of the difference in sample mean, sample number 2 squared. Okay. It is the square root of difference in sample 1 the whole square plus difference in sample 2 the whole square. Next, we'll just plug in the values for sample number 1 and 1. Here, we'll just plug in the values for sample number 2. So here we have 1.6 minus negative 0.5, and then we'll having this value, that is 0.5 minus 1.9. Okay. Doing the subtraction gives us the square root of 2.1 squared plus 2.4 ka square. Now we can think of these values within the parenthesis side on a triangle. So on the x-axis we have the distance between gene 1 and gene 2 in the sample number 1, and on the y-axis we have the distance between gene 1 and 2 in sample number 2. Now hypotenuse is the distance between genes 1 and 2. Now the Pythagoras theorem says the hypotenuse is equal to the square root of x square plus y square. So in this case that means the square root of 2.1 plus 2.4 square. Okay. And that gives us 3.2, the distance between gene number 1 and gene number 2. Okay. So when we have more sample, we just extend the equation. Okay, that's not a big deal. So Euclidean distance is just one method. There are lots more, including the Manhattan distance. The Manhattan distance is just the absolute value of the difference. So instead of squaring the difference and then taking the square root, all we do is take the absolute values of the differences. We can think of the Manhattan distance in geometric terms by imagining that each difference is a line segment. If we take all those line segments and put them together to tail head to tail end, then add the total length of those line segments together. That's a Manhattan distance. Okay, so yes, it makes a difference. Okay, so now here's on the left side a heat map drawn using the Euclidean distance, and here's on the right side the same information is drawn as a heat map, but now we are using the Manhattan distance. So the heat maps are quite similar, but there are also a few differences. The choice and distance metric is basically arbitrary. So there's no biological or physical reason to choose one and not the other. Pick the other one, pick the one that gives you more insight into your data, right? So now do you remember how we merged genes 1 and 3 into cluster number 1 and compared it to the other genes? Well, there are different ways too. One simple idea is to use the average of measurements from each sample, but there are a lot more, and these have effect on clustering as well. So let's talk about different ways to compare clusters. So for the sake of visualizing how the different methods work, imagine our data was spread out on x and y plane. Now imagine that we have already formed these two clusters, and we just want to figure out which cluster this last point belongs to. So we can compare that point to the average of each cluster. This is called the centroid. Okay. Now the closest point in each cluster is called the single linkage. Okay. Or we can compare it to the further point, like the furthest point in each cluster. This is called complete linkage. Okay. So the closest point in each cluster is called simple linkage. The furthest point in each cluster is called complete linkage, and the average of each cluster is called centroid. Okay. And there are other methods as well, right? So here is a heat map that compares the furthest points in the cluster. So the way, if you use R, this is the default setting for the h-cluster function. Okay. The heat map, now this heat map compares the average points in the cluster. Okay. And this compares the closest point in the cluster. Okay. So these heat maps are all very similar, but there are also differences in the way the data is presented, right? So in summary, clusters are formed based on some notion of similarity. You have to decide what is what is the however most programs have reasonable default. So once you have a subcluster, you have to decide how it should be compared to other rows, columns, or subclusters, and etc. And most programs have good default settings for this as well. The height of the branches in the dendrogram shows you what is the most similar thing. So that's pretty much all for today. I hope this video was very much helpful for you. Thank you for watching this video.